In this lesson, we're going to discuss layers and blocks. So let's get started by loading a file, which has several layers in it. When you first look at the file, all we see are the layers that are enabled for viewing. If you notice layer 0, def points, Hunter Hall, truck, trailer 2. So we can turn off the truck layer. Notice the truck disappears. Turn it back on. We can turn off the trailer layer and the trailer goes away. Same with the Hunter Hall. We turn it off and the Hunter is gone. If you remember, if we turn off the truck for a second, if you remember, you zoom all. It zooms in all the viewable entities in a drawing. So it zooms to include all viewable entities. Since the truck was not viewable, then it doesn't include it in the zoom. If we enable the truck again and do a zoom all, then it will in fact include the truck. So let's turn on all the different layers in this particular project and see what's going on here. Now let's zoom all and see all the entities in the drawing. Notice we have a picture of the RV in its original form. That was used, we traced that to get the drawing of the truck cab. We have a picture of the sailboat, scale picture, so we traced that to get the image of the sailboat. And these items down here are another story. So first let's turn off the RV original picture. We'll turn off the Hunter source drawing. Hunter's named the sailboat, it's a Hunter 25.5. And we'll zoom all again. And we'll deal with these issues for a little bit. The purpose of this portion of the drawing down here was because there were no haul lines available for the boat. And to build a trailer, you have to know where to put all these pads to support the trailer. So I'm going to zoom in on just this portion for a moment. And we'll take a look at it. I'll zoom a little bit tighter. Notice here we got the dimensions, the hull lines, and the hull water line. So the water line is this part right here. That's the dimensions of the width of the hull at those stations at the water line. And then the hull line at the deck is up here. That's those positions. So you can see how easy it is to use layers to separate various entities so that they're easily switched on and off for viewing clarity. By using these dimensions, we will in fact be able to build a boat trailer because it shows the exact width at the hull line and the exact width at the deck line of the boat. And this was all traced from taking measurements of a physical boat and placing them here on the drawing. By doing this, we were able to determine the trailer size for that boat, and we can also determine the height of these stands and the distance between the left and right stands on each side of the boat by using this drawing down here, which we will call hull lines. Notice all the dimensions are on one layer. I can easily get rid of the dimensions if I don't want them. Bring them back if I do need them. I'll turn the hull lines back on. So that's the purpose of the lower part of this drawing. It's a demonstration of using layers to isolate different parts of the drawing for various applications. Once a trailer is built, then these hull lines down here really serve no purpose. But I may want to have printouts of the truck and trailer at any time, so all I gotta do is turn off the layers to get rid of the things I don't want to see. Let's go back to our zoom all again. So right now I'll turn off these things. I don't want to see these right now. They just cause confusion for this lesson. So I'm going to turn them all off by turning off their layers. And now we basically have the floor plan, which we haven't talked about yet. So let's zoom on that for a minute. The floor plan allows us to place blocks. For example, the stove is a block, the sink is a block. This is a table that folds down, it's a block. So if you want to show someone your floor plan, all you got to do is come up here, enable the blocks. Let's say you want to see what it looks like. This square thing, by the way, is a full-size bed that folds down. So if we make the full-size, the fold-down bed block not viewable, then you can see what the floor plan is inside the RV, the Mini-Me RV, when the bed is up and the bed fits back here behind in this slot. This right here is a seat. You can simply turn off the view of that block if you want to show the seat. If I can find it, portable bench seat. Seat sits there. The table, fold down tables right here. That's when it's up, that's when it's down. So you can easily demonstrate your floor plan by quickly moving things, just turning blocks on and off. That's one application of blocks, which you may not have considered before. So now I'll go back to the layer list, and I'll turn off the RV floor plan layer. I'll zoom all. And let's look at the truck for a little bit. Let's zoom in on the truck. Notice that the truck has its own layer. If I turn off the viewable truck layer, truck vanishes, which we demonstrated earlier. But the truck is also a block. If we select this truck, so we can select things. We select this thing, we do a property editor on it, and it says it's a truck with a hitch. That's the block name. It's on the layer, the truck layer, and the cover of the truck on that layer is by the layer. Notice that the door and the window are not part of that block. They were added on the drawing. So anytime you're looking at a drawing, you might forget that a lot of that drawing may be a block, such as this truck block. And it starts to get confusing when you start mixing drawings and other layers with blocks. Next, we're going to show you how to move an object, an entity, from one layer to another. So we're going to select our layer list, then we'll go to the idle state. If I hit the right button, we'll draw a block around this window, and we'll go to property editor. And notice it says the layer is on truck right now. I'm going to move it to a different layer. I simply do a drop down. I notice I can't read anything. What's happening here is that this window isn't wide enough to display the text. So what I have to do is come over here. I got to get out of that sub window. Come over here and make the window a little bit larger. And now my drop down will list all the different layers. And I want to move it to, let's say, the hunter layer, which is a red color. And now when I select away from it, you notice it's red, and the layer list for red is 100 lines tick marks. If I turn that layer viewing off, then it disappears. So I have moved it to a different layer. I'm going to save this file, which has this truck test in it, and we're going to come back to that in a little while. What I want to do now is open a new file, which is called block layer colors. It's a very simple drawing, but it's going to be very powerful explaining how block creation actually works. We have this block called circles. If I select it and I go to edit mode, you'll see that it consists of 3 circles. Each circle is a different color. If we do property editor on each circle, that circle is on layer 0. The green circle is on the layer labeled green, and the red circle is on the layer labeled red. And those 3 layers are listed right here: 0, green, and red. So we're going to Go back to our block list so we can exit our edit mode. And these are instances of that block. For example, if I want to put in another one, it's the same thing. I'm going to right click, get out of that. What I did, I put a label here on the layer the block was placed onto. This block was placed onto the layer red. This block was placed onto layer 0. And this block was placed onto layer green. Now if I go to layers and I turn off the red, notice I lost more than just the red. I lost that whole block right there because the block was placed into the red layer. When a block's placed into the red layer, it assumes the parameters of that layer, but there are exceptions here. Like I say, if I turn off the red layer, then it goes away. If I turn off the green layer, notice all the green stuff goes away. But the point is, I put the block into a red layer, yet it retained these 3 covers. Why did it do that? Because my red layer, everything I draw on a red layer should be red. To prove that, I'll select this box and I'll move it to the red layer. Notice that although I moved the box to the red layer, it retained its white cover. So what's going on here? Well, if we select that box, first of all, you notice that if we go to Property Editor, that box is in fact a block labeled with the name rectangle. It's not just an entity on the page. So why didn't it shift to red cover? Well, if we go up here to the block list and we look at this rectangle block, we go to edit mode. If we look at, there's 4 lines that make up this block. So if we look at one of the entities, this top line, we property editor that entity, notice it says it's on layer 0. And it's by layer. The trick is the by layer here. The cover of this line, when you use that block later, will be the cover of the layer that the entity was upon when you created the block. So when you selected these 4 lines, made a block out of them, by layer simply means that that cover will retain the color of the layer that the entities were on when you created the block. It says by layer, you would assume it's by the layer you're going to use the block in, but it's not. It's by the layer you create the block from. And you could have different lines on different layers, and this gets to be real messy. So the best solution I have found is to make all of the colors by the block. So that line is now by the block. This line is still by the layer. I'll make it by the block. This line is by the layer, make it by the block. And the 4th line, by the layer, make it by the block. Here's the bottom line here. This is a block description. When you're editing a block, that's a block description. A block description has no layer of its own. It's a nomad. It lives in its own little page somewhere, its own little page that we're editing right now, and it has no layer assigned to it. When we say by block, what that does for us is every entity of that block that is cover is assigned by block will assume the cover of any layer you place that block into. This is very important because it can really get messy if you don't understand this. So I've changed all of these entities of this block to be by block. Now we go back to our block list and we're going to exit, which will save that block, and notice, wham, it's red now. because it was inserted on the red layer, therefore the block is red. In fact, it was moved from the 0 layer to the red layer, and because I changed the parameters, after I moved it, the color changed from white to red. So this is very important. You have to really have this solid in your mind, that anytime you're dealing with the block, you most likely want, if I can figure out what button to push here, you want to make sure all the entities that make up that block have the assignment. I've got two things going on here. Let me get back to one thing. Now I'm in an edit block mode right now. I'll make sure all the entities within that block have the color assignment of by block. As far as I'm concerned, this should be a default for block creation, but it isn't. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to edit a preference where we can make it the default. That way when you place a block, it assumes the color is the layer you're trying to place the block into. And it will stop all this nastiness that happens when you have by layer selected here for the entity within a block. So let's close this block edit. And let's look at our circles for a moment. I guess you can probably figure out what's going on here now. If we edit the circles block, you'll see that the white circle property editor is by layer. Therefore it stays white no matter where you place that block. Same with the red and green circle, it's by layer. And the red is also by layer. By simply changing these by layers to by block, then all those three circles will change colors to match whatever layer you put them in. Now it's possible you may not want to have the circle colors change to the layer color where you place the block. If that's the case, then you leave it by layer. So this is very important. I've been watching the forums on Qcad, and lots of people have problems with this concept. There's three concepts going on here. You've got the layer cover, you got the block cover, and then you got the block placed on different layers color. So there's three different things that can affect that color. So by doing by layer for all the entities within a block, you make the entire block act like a normal entity when it's placed on a layer. So that's pretty much been beat to death. You need to stop and think about that for a while. Now I've reloaded the file, which has the truck with the green door and the red window. So we'll zoom in on this a little bit. Get the truck centered up here so you can see most of it. And now that you understand how block colors work, this will all make a lot more sense. So let's go ahead and look at the truck. Let me get the block list here, the truck test. Let's edit that for a moment. And if we go ahead and look at that item right there, you probably already know it's by layer. If we look at the roof of the truck, notice that's the whole other block. The property, that's a truck with a hitch block, which is part of the truck test block. And the truck with the hitch block entities are by layer. Let's go back for a second and exit this edit and go back to the truck with the hitch for a moment. Let's edit that thing. And when you look at the roof, you'll notice that it's by layer. And my window's too small again. So it's on layer truck. The cover is by layer though. And remember, that's the layer it was created on, not necessarily the layer that it's on right now. If you look at this wheel down here, different story. That's another block. It's a truck wheel block. And the cover for that is by layer, so it's not going to follow various layers when you place it. And it looks like it will be white. What I want to show you is there's a block, two blocks, which are wheels, which are part of the block labeled truck with a hitch. And then all that, along with the door and the window, are labeled truck test. So I want you to notice how messy this can get if you're not paying attention. One other thing I want to point out, which we didn't discuss yet, if we go to edit a block and we choose one of these items, in this case it's another whole block, the properties, we only talked about the color. You also have the line weight and the line type. So if you have different layers with different line thicknesses or different line types, then once again you got to, if you wanted to assume that layer, you have to do by block. If you wanted to retain the line weight and the line type when you created it, then you leave it by layer. Always remember to exit your block edits. I'll zoom all. So this is unsightly, and you might want it that way for a reason. Most likely you won't. So keep in mind you can have blocks within blocks within blocks, and each one of these blocks can have a by layer or by block color or line type selection, and the block will honor that, whatever that particular entity, color, or line type parameter. So good luck using multiple blocks on multiple layers. There's also another gotcha when it comes to using blocks in your drawings. As you already know, the block itself is stored within that file, that drawing file. If you delete the drawing file, the block's gone because it's part of the file. If you want to put the block in another file, the simplest way to do that is to copy and paste through the clipboard. If you want to move a block to another drawing, you simply select the block in the current drawing, which I'm calling source drawing, and you copy it. You can copy it with a reference, or you can just copy it without a reference. We'll copy it with a reference, so we have a reference point, and we'll just say to center that wheel. Center that wheel will be our reference. Now if you go look at your clipboard, you see it's in there. And it's ready to be pasted into any other drawing, such as Untitled 1. So now all I got to do is come up here and paste. My reference is right there. I could scale it if I wanted to. I don't want to. And now the block's been moved to the drawing Untitled 1. So right here, Untitled 1 has a block with the name of 1, block 1, and if you look at it, it's a rectangle. Okay, file number 2, Untitled 2, has a block number 1. If we look at it, you can see it's a circle. So the purpose of this discussion is things that have to be considered if you want to move your block to another drawing title. For example, you might want to have a drawing which just contains all of your blocks. What you have to watch out for is that if you have the same block name in two different drawings. So let's take this example here. Let's say that Untitled drawing number 1, we're going to insert block 1. Right there. And we switch to drawing 2. We're going to insert block 1 of drawing 2 and drawing 2. But now let's say what we want to do is copy a reference of block 1 from drawing 2 over to drawing 1. The problem here is they have the same block name. So I'm going to select this block. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard with the reference point to be the center of the circle as the reference point. If I go look at the clipboard, you can see that it is actually on the clipboard. Now I switch to drawing number 1, and when I do the paste function, notice I get these options here to the current layer, overwrite layers, overwrite blocks. We want to talk about this one right now. What it's saying is if drawing 1 has a block with the same name as drawing number 2, it won't let you overwrite it unless you check this box. But what it will do, it will substitute the drawing number 1's block 1 and place with the one you're trying to put there. So watch what happens. I'm going to say don't overwrite it. I've already done the paste. Notice it brings in a square, but I had a circle selected. Let's do that again. Go over here. We selected a circle. We pasted the circle with the reference point. Then he went to drawing number 1, and we did a paste, and we did not check the overwrite blocks. Therefore, when it brings in the circle, notice it shows the approximate size of the block 1 from drawing 2, but it reverts back to the block 1 of drawing 1 when you actually place it. So even though the clipboard shows the circle, it's going to import the drawing number 1 block 1 because we didn't say overwrite the block. So let's do that. Okay, so now you notice it's the same block twice. It's a drawing 1 block inserted once while we're in drawing 1 and then copied and pasted from drawing B, and it converted a circle into the drawing 1 block 1. So you can see why this gets confusing. Let's do it again. Let's go back to our drawing 2, and we'll copy with the reference the drawing 2 block 1. We'll select drawing number 1, and we'll hit paste. This time we'll say overwrite the blocks. Watch what it does. We bring in our circle, which we expected it to be a circle because that's what's on our clipboard. And when I place the circle, it just overwrote the old block 1s in drawing number 1 with the circular block 1 in drawing number 2 and all references to it, all instances of it. So now you've just lost your block 1 of drawing 1. It's gone forever if you allowed it to overwrite. If you don't allow it to overwrite, you can insert a new block 1 from drawing 2 into a previous block 1 from drawing 1. I won't let you do it. It reverts back to the drawing 1 block 1. So I hope this clarifies a few things for you. Yes, you can copy and paste a block from drawing 2 to drawing 1, but if the destination drawing has the same block name as the one you're trying to paste, then you have to decide if you want to overwrite the blocks or not overwrite the blocks. If you don't overwrite the blocks, then you cannot paste this block from drawing 2 with the same name into drawing 1 because it won't allow it to happen. Let's add a layer here for a second. We'll create a new layer. We'll call it layer 1, make it red. Say OK. We selected layer 1, we're now set in layer 1. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to say to the current layer for this block we're trying to import. We already overwrote, so it doesn't hurt if we overwrite it again. And notice if I turn off layer 1, the block disappears. So it did in fact go on layer 1, but it didn't change colors, and we all know why from the previous part of this lesson. So these are some interesting little quirks that you have to keep track of. It's not a bug in the program, it's just how the program works. You just have to be aware of it. Now let's go back to drawing 2 and take a look at the block number 1 again. We'll go to edit mode, and notice it's a circle. We'll select the circle. Property editor tells us it's on layer 0, it's by layer. So that the cover is going to remain by layer. It was created on layer 0. So now that we know that, back to our exit our block edit mode. We're going to copy and paste again. This time we're going to copy its reference point like we did before. We're going to hit drawing 1. We're going to do a paste. Only this time we're going to not say to the current layer, because we know right now that the current layer is layer 1. So we won't go to the current layer with this paste. We'll put it here at the bottom. And so what did that do for us? Well, if we turn off layer 1, notice it doesn't disappear. So that means it's on the layer 0. So to current layer violates the layer that the block was created on and places it on the current layer. If you don't say to the current layer, it puts it on the layer that the block was created on. Block was created on, which for this block here, as we already showed you, the circle was created on layer 0. So that's where it's going to put it unless you say to overwrite it. So these are all override features when you're doing a paste. And the current layer does just what it says. Otherwise it goes to the block layer. Now even though it goes to the current layer, it still doesn't assume the current layer color because it was by layer for the cover definition. If you remember from the previous part of this lesson, we said that on drawing number 2, the block 1 circle, the color is defined by layer. So it won't do that. It has to be by block to make the color follow the layer it's placed on. So what we've done here, if I can get out of this current mode here, what we've done, we've used to the current layer and overwrite layers. That just simply means the layer definition will be overwritten. If you bring in a block which has a layer, one of the elements of that block has a layer that has the same name as the layer in drawing 1, then the drawing 2 layer definition will replace the drawing 1 layer definition when you place that block in there. So if you don't want that to happen, then you just don't check the overwrite the layers block, the overwrite layers checkbox. And that will preserve the layers that are defined for document number 1 here on title 1. And if you paste a block which has an entity on a layer that exists in the destination drawing, in this case on title 1, then it will not overwrite that layer definition. It will assume that layer definition just like the overwrite blocks did. This concludes our discussion on layers and blocks, and it's time to move on to a new topic.